Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a book that's been on my list for a while.
Okay.
Eastern Religions and Western Thought. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. Radhakrishnan, a real heavyweight in the world of philosophy and scholarship.
Exactly. And this book, it's not your typical dry academic text.
Far from it, Radhakrishnan had this way of making complex ideas accessible.
Right, like he's inviting you into this ongoing conversation that's been happening for centuries.
A conversation between East and West, spirituality and rationalism.
Yeah, like two different ways of seeing the world.
And what he does so brilliantly is he shows us how those seemingly different approaches are actually connected.
Okay, so paint a picture for me. What's the heart of this conversation? What are we diving into?
Well, he starts by taking us on a whirlwind tour of history.
History.
Yep, in a chapter he calls The World's Unborn Soul.
Wow, The World's Unborn Soul. I love that title. Already sounds deep.
It is. He sees history as the series of integrations.
Integration.
Like humanity is constantly striving for harmony, trying to create larger wholes out of all these seemingly different parts.
Okay, I'm following.
And he uses the example of the Greeks.
Right.
Those brilliant
The
minds.
philosophers and mathematicians.
Exactly. But even they, with all their emphasis on reason and science, they couldn't achieve lasting unity.
Why not?
Because of their intense focus on the city-state, their patriotism. It was like they achieved inner harmony.
But not a broader harmony, like between different cultures.
Precisely. It's a fascinating insight.
So even the Greeks had their limitations.
We all do. And then he takes us through medieval culture shaped by Judaic-Christian beliefs,
Okay.
wrestling with this tension between faith and reason.
Which we're still grappling with today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then through the Renaissance and the rise of scientific rationalism.
So he's showing us the strengths and weaknesses of each era.
Exactly. It's not about saying one civilization is better than another.
It's about seeing the whole picture.
And then he brings us to the heart of the book, the Hindu view of religion.
Okay, now we're getting into the really interesting stuff.
Right, because here's the thing. Hinduism doesn't define religion solely through beliefs.
What do you mean?
It's more about spiritual experience, inner transformation.
So it's not just about saying, I believe this,
Yeah.
but actually experiencing something profound.
You got it. And this
No.
is reflected in a truly radical idea. They believe the impulse to seek truth, to ask questions, that very impulse is divine.
Hold on. You're saying the act of questioning itself is connected to the divine. That's wild.
It is. This is what Hindus call Brahman, the ultimate reality, the source of everything.
So even our doubts are yearning to understand that's a form of connection.
Exactly. It's a huge shift from the Western tendency to focus on achievement's external validation.
It's like we're looking in the wrong place.
In a way. And it gets even deeper with the concept of Atman, the self.
Okay, break that down for me. What is Atman?
In Hinduism, Atman is eternal, a spark of that divine Brahman.
So our essence, our true self, is part of something bigger.
Yes, it's not separate from the divine, it's a part of it.
So it's not about finding God out there, but realizing that divine spark within.
You got it. It completely changes our understanding of the spiritual journey.
Okay, my mind is already blown, and we're just getting started.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
So how does all of this actually play out in a person's life? What does a spiritual life look like in Hinduism?
That's where the concept of mysticism comes in, and Radhakrishnan tackles this head on because there are a lot of misconceptions about it.
Yeah, when I hear mystic, I picture someone meditating on a mountaintop, totally detached from the world.
That's the stereotype, right?
Hmm.
But Radhakrishnan challenges that. He explains that in Hindu thought, mystical experience is deeply intertwined with ethical living.
So it's not about escaping the world, but engaging with it from a place of deeper understanding.
Yes. He uses this amazing metaphor to describe it. The soul is like a smokeless fire.
Okay, I love metaphors. Tell me about the smokeless fire.
Well, think about it. A fire is pure radiant, but also grounded, burning away impurities while giving warmth and light.
Wow, that's beautiful. So it's about inner purification, fueling compassion and service to others.
You got it. It's not about becoming a hermit, but about channeling that inner peace into positive actions.
I'm starting to see how these ideas challenge some of our Western assumptions about spirituality.
It's a different way of looking at things, for sure.
But how does it all connect to the West? Did these traditions ever actually meet?
That's where things get really interesting. Radhakrishnan takes us on this fascinating historical journey, showing these surprising links between East and West that are often ignored.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some of these hidden connections?
Well, buckle up, because this might blow your mind. He suggests that Indian thought might have influenced early Christianity and Gnosticism.
Seriously, like how?
He points to Alexandria, this ancient hub where ideas from all over the world, Greece, Rome, Egypt, Persia, India, they all swirled together for centuries.
It was like a melting pot of ancient wisdom.
Exactly. And get this, he even brings up the idea that Pythagoras, the famous Greek philosopher and mathematician, might have had some contact with Eastern thought.
Hold on, Pythagoras. The triangle guy.
I know, right? It makes you question everything you thought you knew about the history of ideas.
It totally does. We often think of East and West as separate, but Radhakrishnan is showing us they've been in dialogue for centuries.
It's a hidden history that we're only now starting to uncover.
And it makes you realize how interconnected we all are.
Absolutely. And speaking of connections, we can't forget the crucial role of Arabic scholars who acted as bridges transmitting knowledge between East and West during the Middle Ages.
So it's like this constant flow of ideas back and forth, shaping and reshaping each other.
Yes. And that brings us to a crucial question, especially for us living in the 21st century.
Okay, I'm hooked. What's the question?
The question is, how do we integrate the spiritual and the material, the inner and outer life to create true progress, especially in a world facing so many complex challenges?
That's a huge question. And I have a feeling Radhakrishnan has some thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. He saw humanity at a crossroads, and he believed that the wisdom of the East, specifically from traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, held a key to navigating these times.
Okay, so give it to me straight. What's the key?
He argues that we can't just keep chasing material progress and ignore our inner lives. We need to cultivate wisdom, compassion, a sense of connection with something larger than ourselves.
I can see how that's relevant. I mean, look at the world today. Climate change, political divisions, social unrest. It's like we've advanced technologically, but haven't figured out how to live together harmoniously.
Exactly. He's critical of both religious dogmatism and militant atheism, seeing both as extremes that lead to division.
So it's not about choosing one side or the other.
No, it's about finding a balanced worldview that honors both reason and spiritual insight.
Okay, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do this? What does this spiritual integration look like in practice?
Well, one example he gives is our obsession with consumerism. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that happiness comes from buying more stuff.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
But Eastern thought offers a different perspective.
What's the alternative?
It's about finding contentment detachment from material possessions, finding joy in simpler things.
So less focus on stuff and more on inner peace and fulfillment.
Precisely. And it doesn't mean we all have to become minimalists or give up our favorite things. It's about finding a balance and recognizing that true happiness comes from something deeper than what we own.
That makes sense. I've definitely fallen into that trap of thinking, if I just get this new gadget or go on that vacation, then I'll be happy. But it never lasts, does it?
Right. It's a temporary fix. Radhakrishnan is challenging us to question those assumptions and look within for lasting fulfillment.
I love how he's pushing us to go beyond simple either-or thinking. It's not about choosing East over West or reason over spirituality. It's about finding a way to integrate the best of both worlds.
Exactly. It requires open-mindedness, a willingness to step outside our comfort zones, and a deep respect for diverse human experiences.
So we've talked about the Hindu view of religion, but I'm curious how it stacks up against Western ideas. What are the key differences?
One fundamental difference is the understanding of the self. In Western thought, the self is often seen as this separate, independent entity distinct from the divine.
Right. Like we're these isolated individuals trying to find our way in the world.
Exactly. But in Hinduism, as we mentioned earlier, the Atman, the self, is a part of Brahman.
So there's this fundamental interconnectedness. We're not separate from the divine, but rather a part of it.
Precisely. And this has a huge impact on how we approach spirituality.
How so?
In the West, there's often this focus on achieving salvation, whether through faith or good deeds, as a way to escape this world and get to heaven.
Okay.
But in Hinduism, the ultimate goal is self-realization.
What exactly does self-realization mean in this context?
It means recognizing our inherent divinity, our connection to everything, realizing our true nature. It's not about escaping from the world, but seeing it with new eyes, experiencing it from a place of deeper understanding and compassion.
Okay, that's a really different perspective.
Yeah.
It's not about getting somewhere else, but waking up to what's already here.
You got it. And this leads to a different understanding of ethics as well.
Ethics.
Yeah, in the West, morality is often based on rules and commandments.
Thou shalt not.
Exactly. But in Hinduism, it's more about cultivating virtuous qualities like compassion, nonviolence, truthfulness, self-control.
So it's more about inner transformation that naturally leads to right action, not just following rules out of fear or obligation.
Right. It's not about avoiding punishment or seeking rewards, but aligning your actions with your true inherently good nature.
This reminds me of the Hindu concept of the four classes or varnas that we talked about earlier. They were based on natural inclinations, right? Does that connect to this idea of self-realization?
Absolutely. Ideally, the idea behind the Varnas is that each person finds their place in society based on their unique talents and skills.
Okay.
This allows them to contribute to the collective good and pursue spiritual growth simultaneously.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where personal fulfillment and social responsibility align.
Exactly. Of course, we discussed how the caste system became distorted, leading to rigid hierarchies and inequality, but the underlying principle is something to consider. How can we create a society where everyone is supported in reaching their full potential, both material and spiritual?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And it shows how Radhakrishnan isn't just throwing abstract ideas at us. He's challenging us to think about how we can apply these insights to create a more just and harmonious world.
And that requires recognizing the interconnectedness of everything. Our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the planet and society as a whole. It's all woven together.
So this spiritual integration isn't just about personal growth, it's about social transformation as well.
Exactly. And that's where the potential for a real meeting of civilizations comes in.
What do you mean?
It's not about one culture dominating another, but recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of each tradition. It's about finding ways to collaborate, learn from each other, and create a future that honors the diversity of human experience.
So finding common ground and building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. It's about expanding our understanding of what it means to be human and recognizing the shared values that connect us across cultures.
I'm really starting to see how this book goes beyond just a comparison of religions. It's a call to action.
It is. He invites us to engage with the wisdom of the past, challenge our assumptions, and work together to create a better future. Speaking of the past, we touched upon those historical connections between East and West earlier. Are you ready for some more mind-blowing examples?
Bring it on. I'm all about those aha moments.
Well, how about this? Radhakrishnan points out some striking similarities between the teachings of Jesus and Buddha, especially their emphasis on compassion, nonviolence, and detachment from possessions.
Wow. It really makes you wonder if there was some cross-cultural exchange going on back then.
Right. And remember that whole Pythagoras thing? Imagine if one of the founders of Western philosophy was influenced by Eastern ideas. It would completely change our understanding of intellectual history.
It would totally shatter that idea of a clear-cut division between East and West.
And don't forget Alexandria, that vibrant cultural hub where ideas from Greece, Rome, Egypt, Persia, and India all mixed together for centuries. It was like a giant melting pot of ancient wisdom.
Okay, Alexandria is officially on my travel bucket list.
Mine too. And that's where Radhakrishnan's historical perspective is so valuable. He shows us that this exchange of ideas, this cross-pollination of cultures, has been happening for a long time. We often overlook it, but it's always been there.
It's like we're rediscovering a hidden history, a more interconnected past that challenges those narratives of cultural purity.
Exactly. And that realization changes how we see ourselves, our place in the world, and our relationship to other cultures. It's about recognizing those threads of influence that run through history, connecting us across time and space.
And recognizing that we're part of a larger story that's still being written, and we have a say in how it unfolds.
Yes, and that's what's so exciting about engaging with thinkers like Radhakrishnan. They push us to think differently, see the world with new eyes, and recognize the potential within each of us to contribute to a more harmonious future.
Okay, this has been a lot to take in, but it's been absolutely fascinating. It feels like we've traveled across centuries and continents in just a few minutes.
It's been quite a journey, but we're not done yet. In our final segment, we'll explore some practical applications of Radhakrishnan's work, looking at how his insights can help us navigate the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century.
Okay, I'm ready for more. Bring on part 3.
Okay, we're back, and wow, my brain is still buzzing after all that history and philosophy.
A lot to unpack.
It is. So let's get practical. What does all of this mean for me, for our listeners, living in the 21st century? How do we take these big ideas from Radhakrishnan and actually apply them to our lives?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Radhakrishnan himself, he was deeply concerned about the state of the world, and he really believed that Eastern wisdom had something to offer.
Okay, so let's talk practical steps. What can people actually do?
Well, one practice that comes to mind immediately is mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, it's a core principle in Buddhism, but it's also found in various forms throughout Eastern traditions. Okay, I've heard the term, but I'll be honest, I'm not always sure what it really means.
It's about cultivating present moment awareness.
Present moment awareness.
Yeah, paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations without judgment.
Yeah.
In our busy world, it's so easy to get swept up in the chaos and lose touch with ourselves.
Oh, tell me about it. My mind is constantly racing.
Exactly.
Right.
So mindfulness is like hitting the pause button.
Creating some space.
Yeah, just a few minutes a day of focused breathing meditation or even just paying attention to the sensations of your body can make a difference.
It's like giving yourself permission to just be.
Exactly. And from that place of stillness, we can start making more conscious choices, choices that are aligned with our values, with the well-being of everyone.
That reminds me of Radhakrishnan's emphasis on ethical conduct. It's not just about following rules, right?
No, not at all. He saw ethics as flowing naturally from spiritual insight.
So it's about cultivating those virtuous qualities that lead to right action.
Yes, qualities like compassion, nonviolence, truthfulness, self-control.
Okay, and those qualities can apply to every part of our lives.
Exactly. Our relationships, our work, our consumption habits, even how we engage in politics.
So it's about bringing that awareness and intentionality to everything we do.
You got it.
I see how the pieces fit together. Mindfulness helps us become more aware, and that awareness can then guide us toward more ethical, compassionate actions.
It's a beautiful cycle.
It is. And there's one more piece we need to add, the idea of interconnectedness.
Yes. Radhakrishnan saw this as a fundamental truth.
Right. We're not isolated individuals, but part of a larger web of life. But how do we live that out in a practical way?
It starts with shifting our perspective.
How so?
Instead of seeing ourselves as separate from others from the planet, we start to recognize how deeply intertwined we all are.
Okay.
Our actions have consequences not just for us, but for everyone and everything around us.
It's like moving from me to we.
Exactly. And that shift can have a ripple effect, creating positive change in our communities and beyond.
So even small actions can make a difference.
Absolutely. You might think, well, I'm just one person. What impact can I really have?
It's easy to feel that way.
But Radhakrishnan reminds us that every thought, every action, every choice matters.
Like the butterfly effect, right?
Exactly. By choosing to live more consciously, by aligning our lives with wisdom and compassion, we contribute to a larger shift in consciousness.
So we each have the power to be agents of change.
Yes. We don't have to wait for someone else to fix things. We can start right here, right now, with ourselves.
So cultivating mindfulness, living ethically, embracing interconnectedness, these are all ways to bring Radhakrishnan's ideas to life.
And they're accessible to anyone regardless of your background or beliefs.
It's about taking these ancient insights and weaving them into our modern lives.
Not rejecting the modern world, but enriching it.
Okay, well, it feels like we've reached the end of our deep dive into Eastern religions and Western thought.
What a journey.
It has been. I hope this conversation has sparked something in our listeners, a sense of curiosity, a desire to learn more, or even a commitment to action.
That would be amazing.
Because the wisdom of the East, it's not just some dusty old philosophy. It's a living tradition.
With so much to offer.
It can transform our lives and help us create a better world.
For everyone.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep connecting. This journey of understanding, it never really ends.
And the world needs your unique contribution.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep making those ripples of positive change.